And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, founder and CEO of GlobalPro, here with another Recovery Report Live 2025 to kick it off. We are in the throes of an extreme weather situation with plenty of discussion going on around insurance, whether it's on the West Coast with the wildfires of California or anywhere from the Midwest, South coastal areas, as well as all the way into the Northeast that are being impacted by extreme winter storms. So plenty to talk about, plenty things to mention as it relates to insurance. In fact, what we've been seeing is many interviews with victims of particularly the wildfires talking about the mass cancellations of policies, the lack of coverage, and other issues plaguing the California residents that have been devastated. Our hearts go out to all of the families and victims, the pets, the businesses that have suffered and continue to suffer damages because of this situation that continues to unfold in the media, on social media, and in real time for those that are on the ground trying their best to help the victims of these devastating fires. Particularly, something important to note is that the large amount of cancellations that recently happened in 2024, now here in 2025, we will see major financial impacts in the billions of dollars. The infrastructure costs, the personal property losses are extraordinary. I mean, many people that don't even permanently reside in California are reporting complete and total loss of their personal property as well as their homes and businesses. It's an unbelievable situation. And sadly, a lot of this has to do with legislative decisions that have been made and leadership changes or changes that need to be made in order to make sure or to, in fact, ensure that there is a future for the residents in California that's not only to help them rebuild and recover, but that there's a future opportunity for insurance to financially protect them from future losses. Many things need to change in order for that to happen. Many legislative changes need to happen. New changes in leadership need to happen. The objective here is to protect us as policyholders, as consumers. Real estate is a very important part of the economic driver in the United States, and it's important that it is protected. And without insurance, unfortunately, a lot of these transactions and the recovery efforts are going to be hampered. And so, but before we get too deep on the insurance side, I want to thank all of the first responders, the firefighters that are putting their life on the line to make sure that certain personal property is protected, that lives are protected, that pets and people are moving out of the areas that have been affected in evacuations in the evacuation zone. So it's an unbelievable task. And I know there's a lot of reporting about cutting in funding and different things like that with regards to the fire department and issues with water. But these women and men, these men and women are still on the front lines doing whatever they possibly can. I even saw one heartfelt video where a firefighter was using a cone to scoop up water from a puddle to douse out a small fire that was on the side of a road. I mean, they're doing whatever they possibly can. And there's going to be many stories like this of heroic efforts to protect the lives, because the lives of these residents and these people that have been affected by it. Because at the end of the day, what's most important is that our health and safety, right? We can always replace our homes and our personal property, and it may take time, and it's going to suck, and it's going to hurt. And we may not get back to where we were because the losses were so devastating and insurance covers so little. We talk about shrinkflation a lot on the Recovery Report Live. It's been a topic that we've talked about in so many episodes. And here we are kicking off 2025 on the Recovery Report Live after doing this for so many years, providing you information you can use, where we so often talked about legislative impacts, this idea of shrinkflation, this extraordinary rise of insurance premiums. And I went on ChatGPT because I was just curious as to see what some of this AI would come up with regards to the top 5. This is the question I posed to ChatGPT this morning. I said, what are the top property insurance issues consumers are dealing with at the start of 2025? Number 1, rising insurance premiums. Number 2, reduced availability of coverage, shrinkflation. Number three, impact of recent natural disasters. And it highlighted two, well, primarily three: California wildfires, hurricanes, and floods. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, we have a winter storm. We have a low pressure system that's pushing through the Gulf. We have an extraordinary Arctic weather that's coming through. They've named these storms. I mean, this is an extreme situation. I mean, as far south as South Florida, we had a chilly 50 some degrees. There possibly even freeze warnings that they may institute here. Number four, increased underinsurance. What that means is that people are choosing less coverage. They want the higher deductibles. They want the less coverage. We see this plaguing the condominium association market here in South Florida, where you're seeing associations elect effectively not to even insure the full amount of the replacement cost value for their properties. They're choosing lesser coverage or not choosing to do new appraisals. They're fighting back on those appraisals and issues, even though there's a rising cost of construction. The idea of having to insure every single inch of your commercial property, there's questions, there's concerns about that and how to actually regulate that stuff. And number five, regulatory and market responses. And that's where I talked about the legislative changes and issues that we have many times highlighted here on the Recovery Report Live. So I want to dive in a little bit on the rising insurance premiums. It says in 2023, premiums rose by an average of 11.3%, with states like Texas and Arizona seeing even higher surges. Factors contributing to these hikes include increased frequency of natural disasters, rising home values, escalating construction costs, things I just literally highlighted as I was going through this, right? But also, one of the things that's not taking note is just simply the lobbying efforts of the insurance companies has at a whole new level. And this idea of hiding the buck, the lack of reporting. I mean, there's been issues here in South Florida, which we have seen. Not South Florida, Florida as a whole, rather, where they were asked to provide certain disclosures to substantiate the legislative initiatives and changes that had been occurred based on representations the insurance companies were making regarding litigation. And quite frankly, as we saw with regards to the insolvency reports by auditors, it made no mention of that issue. And then on the flip side of it, you had you saw some of the reports come out and make no reference or any way substantiate or support those statements or issues that were led to this wide sweeping anti-consumer legislation, capping attorneys' fees, and it's all about restricting your access to representation. At the end of the day, just allowing them to operate in a very free market, but their kind of free market, not the free market that allows for competition and you to get better rates, but more of a free market where they can pretty much do whatever they want. Let's be honest. I mean, don't sign anything, right? Don't get representation. Don't hire competent mitigation contractors that will properly do things and then get directly paid by insurance company. Don't focus on those things. Focus on the other things. Focus on what one or two bad actors are doing, but there's so many other bad actors. We mentioned in many other broadcasts. When you look at fraud, most fraud is being committed on the agency side of this. It's not the public adjusters or even the mitigation companies. And so when we want to address these things head on as it relates to property, let's look at how things are being handled on the adjusting side of stuff with regards to many reports that have evidence that insurance companies were intentionally underpaying claims by editing estimates with absolutely no regard for the consumer in the situation they had. And you had adjusters blowing whistles regarding issues and coming out on record and TV and 60 Minutes talking about how they felt for these homeowners. They included these things, but ultimately it was decided that by the insurance company and someone's bean counter sitting in some other office that they're not entitled to it. Not because their policy didn't entitle them to it, not because of the laws required them to pay it, but because it was better for the insurance company's profit and bottom line. So reduced availability of coverage, shrinkflation. This is something that's been going on for several years. And honestly, every time I sit down with any sort of let's call it decision maker, or legislator, or someone in power, and I talk about this issue, it's amazing how little knowledge they have of the impacts or how prolific this is. And when we talk about surplus lines insurance, and then people are getting pushed into those markets because Citizens and other state-run insurers are pulling back and canceling policies, they don't realize how unregulated the policy forms and their obligations are relative to what a state admitted insurer would be, and the impacts of those things. So reduced coverage. So one of the things that, for instance, State Farm and Allstate have stopped offering new homeowner policies in the state, setting elevated risks of wildfires and regular towns. This is directly related to what is going on right now and playing out. So it talks about, in the these legislative initiatives that just really just have failed. I mean, I'm going through the ChatGPT output here. Impacts of recent natural disasters. I mean, over 1,000 structures have been damaged already, and it still continues to burn, exceeding $50 billion of damages. I mean, these fires continue to intensify. You have the winds. The winds are extraordinary, and a lot of firefighters have come out over the years. There's famous statements by Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump, as well as you had other podcasts where experts have come on over the years talking about the grave danger in California with regards to how the forestry is being maintained, the lack of access to water and resources, the winds, and how they get lucky with regards to the shifting of them, which allows for the extinguishment of it. Weather events that just suddenly come up, like extreme torrential rainfall, which helps and to contain the fires. So we're going to continue tracking and obviously watching that. If there's anything that we can do, we are always on the front lines helping, whether it's sending money and resources or actually on the boots on the ground, working with policyholders to, in fact, protect their interests. Excuse me. I'm dealing with this weather change that we have definitely seen. It's congested me, and if you've tuned in before, my voice is changing and dealing with these things, and I'm fighting through it as well. But regulatory changes need to happen. Regulatory changes to hold insurance companies accountable for their actions. They want not to be sued, or they want to restrict your access to a lawyer, and they want to point to one or two things that they can, but yet not substantiated with actual evidence. Well, we need to call their bluff. We as consumers need to step up and say more and do more. Actions speak louder than words. GlobalPro is going to continue to do that. I want to thank all of you for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report. Again, my apologies for the cough. I'm excited for 2025. I'm excited for all of that we're going to do to impact our community, to help policyholders and consumers, and continue to provide you more actionable information that you can use. So make sure that you've hit that subscribe button, liked us, and follow us on all our social media. And if you haven't already, check us out online at globalpro.com, because when we go live right here on the Recovery Report Live, we want to make sure that you get that notification and you tune in. We'll see you next week right here on the Recovery Report Live.